introduce our speaker today, Susan DiGregorio. She is a speech-language pathologist who works with adult patients at the RVNAhealth Therapy Center. Susan specializes in the rehabilitation of swallowing, speech, language, cognition, and voice following neurological traumatic injuries and treatment for head and neck cancers. Susan joined RVNAhealth in 2017 as a therapist in both in-home and outpatient settings. She then pursued in-home therapy full-time before returning to outpatient therapy, where she enjoys the opportunity to help her clients set and achieve their goals. Susan earned her BA in psychology from SUNY New Paltz and her MA in Speech-Language Pathology from CUNY Lehman. She holds a certificate of clinical competence from the American Speech-Language Hearing Association and is a Certified Dementia Practitioner. Wow. Okay, with that, I'll turn it over to Susan.
Thank you. Welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm glad we all missed the rain. Those clouds definitely looked pretty ominous on the way in. Okay. Oh, this is not turning on there.
Sorry about that.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, so I just wanted to, go ahead. That was a wonderful introduction by Andrea, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about why a speech pathologist is providing this lecture today. Some of you might not be familiar with what a speech pathologist does. Maybe you've only heard of us working maybe with your grandchildren in schools. We do service from birth till death, although most of us specialize in one area. So I do not personally see children. I work only with the older population. I've done that since I graduated. I find that much more rewarding and definitely less exhausting than working with children. So I work primarily with people who have swallowing difficulty, which is a disorder known as dysphagia, language disorder, such as one resulting from a stroke or brain injury, that is known as aphasia, motor speech disorder, so that's difficulty talking. You might have also experienced that and maybe some loved ones if they've also had a stroke, or Parkinson's disease, that is known as dysarthria. Or people who have voice disorders, increased hoarseness or changes to what the vocal cords, how the vocal cords are producing good sounding speech, and that is known as dysphonia. And I also work a lot with people who have cognitive disorders. Some of the diagnoses I work with, like I mentioned, are stroke, Parkinson's disease, cancer, ALS, brain injury, dementia, and mild cognitive impairments. Okay, so the reason that we're here is to talk about a very serious matter, right? We need to have everybody, whatever age you are, really consider and think about Alzheimer's and dementia and brain health in general. So Alzheimer's is one type of dementia. There are several types. It is the most common type. At this point, the Alzheimer's Association projects that there are 7 million Americans living with Alzheimer's, and that equates to about 12% of the population, 65 and older in Connecticut, okay, over 70,000 people. They project that the number of people living in America with Alzheimer's will grow to 12.7 in just 25 years. Okay, that's doubling of it as age 65 and older, and it can affect people younger than that, but this is capturing that data only. Dementia is the 5th leading cause of death in people 65 and older. And in 2024, dementia cost the United States $360 million, and that is projected to reach about $1 trillion in 25 years. I mean, that's just mind-boggling.
You got a couple of good news?
I like to start with that, get that out of the way. Now, I want to just make sure that we're all on the same page with some definitions. Okay, this is common lingo to me, but might not be for everybody else. Just the word cognition. Okay, what does that mean? What is our cognition? We all have some degree of cognition. We would not be sitting here if we did not. Cognition is the process of taking in information from our world, taking in through our senses, through our experiences, our thoughts, and doing stuff with that information in our brain, okay? Now, we don't have to do a lot with it just to have very basic level cognition. But for those of us that are active and like you being here, we also have something called executive functioning skills. These are the higher level cognitive processes that involve our self-awareness, what we're thinking about ourselves. Can we think about our thinking? That is very, very crucial in being able to correct ourselves. Can we think abstractly? That is a part of executive function. Can we plan something and execute it? Okay? Think about all the little things that you do every day, getting up, taking food out of the freezer to defrost it, and then later on following a multi-step recipe to get dinner ready by a certain time at night because you know you have to also get out to go do something, some other activity. That is you using not just your basic cognitive skills, but your very high level executive functioning skills. Can you be flexible with that thinking? If something goes wrong, if you lost an ingredient that you thought you had, or you ran out of it and you thought you had more in the house, can you adjust that recipe? Our working memory, and we'll talk more about different types of memory later on. Working memory, this is very crucial to getting anything done throughout the day. And then our complex attention skills, and of course, reasoning and problem solving. Okay, so think about all of these executive function skills as your brain's manager. This is, the manager is getting everything done throughout the day while the computer system is just running. That's the cognition. It's just running behind the scenes, but the executive functioning is really doing all the work. Okay? Okay. So what happens when we age, right? There's normal changes to the brain as we age, and these changes have effects on our cognition and our executive functioning skills. These changes can include things like volume loss in the brain, slower connections or demyelination, the connection is not getting as quick to the synapse, reduced blood flow to the brain, maybe increased inflammation. But the normal, healthy, aging brain can still learn new things and adapt, okay? But it does result in a gradual change to memory and processing speed. Changes in attention and the ability to multitask, okay? You might have noticed this in yourself. I've noticed it in myself. Doing two things at once has become harder. You know, you start to be like, okay, well, I used to be able to do that, or, you know, now it's becoming a little hard. Now I feel like my attention gets pulled more so in one direction, and what else I'm trying to do kind of slips through the cracks. It's harder for me to put a complex recipe together and also talk to somebody at the same time, you know? But retained language ability in the normal, healthy, aging brain, okay? That is really important. It's a really important distinction between the other cognitive impairments that can develop. That includes the ability to read. Yes, you might not remember every detail or every book that you read. Sometimes I read a book and I'm like, I don't even remember who the author is. But I'm still understanding what I'm reading. I can still talk. I can still have verbal reasoning skills to have a complex conversation with somebody, okay? Whereas mild cognitive impairment is a stage of cognitive impairment that's like a transition stage. You might start to notice some more behaviors that are not quite maybe what other people around you are going through. Seems to be a little bit more. Now you're still living on your own, you're still doing the things you need to do, but there might be some red flags that are starting to poke their little heads up. With dementia, that is now a separate stage that somebody maybe with mild cognitive impairment has entered into, and it is a loss of language and executive functioning to a degree that a person to really significantly interfere with the daily life. Okay, so not just occasional loss of, memory for an appointment, but inability to maybe schedule that appointment. And we'll talk more about, the warning signs in a little bit. But just as an example, everybody misplaces something around the house, right? You go around, you find your car keys, okay, not a big deal, right? But somebody with dementia who has now lost the semantic relationship between keys and what they do, they'll be wandering around the house and stumble upon car keys and perhaps not recognize what they are even for, okay? Or they might recognize them and not remember that they have not been driving for the past year, okay? So that's a big difference between, recognition of things that are in your daily life, your daily routines. Okay, so some warning signs for recognizing changes in cognitive function, okay? Getting lost in familiar places, okay? Repetitive questioning, right? So we all kind of ask the same questions. Don't get nervous, if you feel like you've asked your husband or your spouse the same question more than once, maybe that evening. But then when they answer, you have that light bulb that goes off. Oh yeah, that's right, you said that already. That's attention, okay? That's not, full on memory. That's just you heard the answer in real time, you understood it, but you didn't really secure it in your brain. You weren't paying close enough attention to it, so you couldn't remember it, okay? But you did remember later on that you asked it and you've been through that back and forth questioning, okay? Someone who does a lot of repetitive questioning also doesn't have that awareness. Remember that executive function skill of self-awareness. They're lacking that insight that they've asked that question and now they're asking it again. You might also start to notice some odd or inappropriate behaviors, forgetfulness of recent events, repeated falls or loss of balance. Now that might seem kind of off track with how is that, physically, how is that affecting my cognition? But it is very much correlated. The speed with which somebody walks, they've had lots of studies done, research has shown that the slower somebody does walk, the higher risk of cognitive decline. Also, this is leading to, we can have falls because of how forgetful we are becoming. If we leave something in the way, if we put down a laundry basket and then we sit down and then we forget that we have that laundry basket down by our feet to the side, or we make impulsive movements, not remembering to use a walker or a cane if that's what we use to help us walk with. You might also notice some personality changes in people. Obviously, this is not going unnoticed by the person that's experiencing it, right? Especially in the early stages. We know ourselves, we recognize if we're not remembering, but of course we're trying to hide this as much as possible. So what do people inevitably do is they socially isolate and they avoid. This is a big change in somebody that has always been outgoing and at every event. You are also can notice a decline in planning and organization. So let's say that loved one always hosted for a holiday. This time you went to their house and things were just kind of scattered. They were very stressed, right? It didn't run as smoothly. So that might be a signal that things are becoming very overwhelming. Multi-step tasks and planning something very large can become very overwhelming for that loved one. You might also notice some changes in their diet, their weight, their eating habits. It is a big red flag if you're going to somebody's house and there's half-eaten food left on plates, or you open the microwave and there's something left in the microwave. That's working memory, right? Putting something in the microwave, obviously it's cooking, you're stepping away, you're getting involved, doing something else, and you forget that you had the food in there in the first place. Your brain is not sending the same signals that you're hungry per se, so you just go ahead and you skip that meal until somebody finds it. You might also notice some changes in hygiene. It goes with forgetting, increased apathy, just disinterest in wanting to do things. Again, of course, noticing those changes in yourself. And then there comes the changes in the language. more so than what we, as a normal healthy brain, would be experiencing in terms of word retrieval. Okay? Again, not to scare you, we all have trouble with coming up with the name of some, things every once in a while, or finding that one word that you were really looking for in conversation. It's such an easy word. Why couldn't I pull it out? Right? That is all normal until it becomes much more pattern-like and disruptive to the conversation. Okay. So now to talk a little bit about some risk factors. Okay. How do we prevent this from happening in the first place? The Lancet Commission has now identified 14 modifiable risk factors that may lead to prevention or delay of about 45%, could you keep that in mind for after, of all dementias. Okay, I'll go through them. You can, hopefully so the print is large enough for everyone to read, but smoking, right? Physical inactivity, and this we will talk a lot more about. Poor diet and obesity. Excessive alcohol consumption, high blood pressure and high cholesterol, especially in midlife, diabetes, that's leading to obviously vascular issues, depression, low cognitive engagement, that's low social activity, okay? Hearing loss, lower level of education, traumatic brain injury in the past, and they've recently added air pollution and vision. Okay, the less involvement with senses that you have, the worse the cognition can become, right? If you know somebody that has very poor eyesight, very poor hearing, how much different is that person's life like now, right? When they are limited in how much they can engage, reading, listening to things on TV, or listening to books, being with other people. I just wanted to highlight the hearing loss and how impactful it is on cognition. Just a mild hearing loss that is untreated, okay, can double your risk of dementia. A moderate loss can triple it, and a severe loss, you have a 5 times greater risk of developing dementia, okay? So it is really important to speak with your professionals, your audiologists, and see what type of system could benefit you, whether it's hearing aids or just like a little pocket talker microphone that can help you and your loved ones communicate in the home. Okay. All right, now on to the better news. What are some promising strategies, okay? So how can we prevent and slow cognitive decline? Now that we know what the risk factors are, we know what the warning signs are, is there hope? So yes, there are lots of studies that have shown that up to at 40% of cognitive decline and dementia can be prevented, like we said before, right, with those 14 modifiable risk factors. About 40% of this can be changed, stopped, right? Up to about 50% of individuals with mild cognitive impairment can remain stable or improve if given interventions. There are behavioral and non-pharmacological interventions that are promising for slowing or preventing cognitive decline, and exercise in particular. We will come back to that, okay? So the takeaway point is that this is not one magic cure, not one magic pill that will stop this in its tracks, okay? This is a multifactorial approach. There's lots of things that could be done, and not everything is gonna fit into your lifestyle or fit you if you don't have those risk factors. Okay, so I hope that you can take away something, maybe even one small goal that you can come away from today and say, I'm gonna maybe change that one thing, or I'm gonna increase this in my life, or take away from doing this. That can reduce my risk of having something happen in the future or worsen. So I mentioned that because, I said at the beginning of the lecture that brain health and the idea of cognitive decline, this is a conversation that we should be having with all ages. Not just with an older population, that's primarily who I'm speaking with, And I'm grateful with other family members come and they're on board with it too, and they recognize like these are things that I could be doing right now as well, because it's found that, the changes in the brain, it's not that they're happening, at the 80th year and then you're noticing in your loved one 6 months later that, oh, something is happening. These changes have already begun about 20 or 30 years before in the brain. Prevention might be more effective than actual treatment once that cognitive impairment is evident. This is part of what I do. The speech pathologist can work with an individual, evaluate, treat, a lot of education, and some referrals too, because I might be the first one that they're coming to. If their primary care doctor is savvy enough to know that, they can refer out to a speech pathologist. I might be that first one, but really having a neurologist on board or a neuropsychologist, getting a formal diagnosis, knowing exactly what stage or where you rank in the overall cognitive skills and testing. There are also some preventative medicines out there, such as preventative neurologists and cardiologists. Unfortunately, there is nowhere near as many. Just even doing a Google search, the city is the only place that I can really find them. So I do suggest going online and typing in preventative neurologists if you're curious. There are a couple of centers in the city. Mount Sinai has a center for wellness and cognitive health. NYU Langone has a center for cognitive neurology, and Columbia, Doctors Aging and Dementia Treatment Program. But I'm sure that there's probably a long wait lists to get into see these professionals, because there are just far too few. Okay, so the way that we try to promote cognitive health, we have a nice little acronym here, DANCERS. So, okay, it's a good way to remember, talk about memory. What can I do to help myself now that I've identified maybe I have a few of these risk factors, or I have some of these red flags, or I'm noticing a little concerned about a loved one of mine. First of all, making sure that you're managing whatever diseases you have right now. Okay, so I do see some people that, that have strokes and never go to the doctor, they've been very healthy, but they're also not accepting that there are some changes that are coming with age to their vascular systems, that they need to control blood pressure, cholesterol, maybe they need to stop smoking. Treat what you can, talk to your doctor about how can I manage whatever I have going on now so that I'm controlling that, and that's not gonna further increase my risk of cognitive decline. Also talk about some of the medications that you're already on, because there are some very common medications, for example, that treat COPD or depression or incontinence. These have known side effects of cognitive decline. So if it's a medication that could be adjusted or changed, or maybe you're now putting 2 and 2 together that you're starting to notice these changes. There's also changes related to menopause and reduced estrogen. So a lot is coming out about, what drugs I can take to help myself not have as significant of a change. Activity. So mention, physical activity. If you are going to maybe take one thing away and say, I'm gonna add this into my routine, this might be one of the easier things to add, because it's never too late to start exercising, okay? Exercise has shown a significant reduction in your risk of dementia and mild cognitive impairment, especially midlife exercise. There's lots of different kinds of exercise, and they all have different benefits. So an aerobic exercise, for example, will increase your blood flow to your brain, increase the oxygen to your brain. This is extremely helpful in reducing, clearing out toxins in the brain. Brain needs nourishment, right? It gets that from our blood and oxygen. Weightlifting and strengthening, this is also a critical part of aging. Improving bone density, reducing your risk of falls. It becomes a vicious cycle, you were doing fine, but then you had a fall, and then you end up in a rehab for 3 months and you're not doing anything. So all of a sudden, now those things that you had under control cognitively start to really pop up and become much harder, and then you try to go back home and it becomes hard to get back into the swing of things, okay? So we want, again, prevention of that fall in the first place can help them prevent that cognitive decline. And also doing things like mind-body exercise. So yoga, tai chi, meditation, these also, though they're not aerobic, they might not be increasing the heart rate as much as something else, it's part of your exercise routine. It's improving your balance, improving your gait speed, promotes connectivity of neurons, reduces inflammation because it reduces stress in the body. Now, women with a moderate to high level of activity and men with moderate level have significantly lower risks of cognitive impairment. It's been shown in studies. And regular exercise was about 2.5 hours per week of moderate intensity. Okay, so the N in dancers is for nutrition. So obviously watch your caloric intake, limit your processed foods, your sugary foods, your unhealthy fats. Follow, I'm sure everybody, my doctor including, has recommended diets like the Mediterranean diet. It's been proven, time and time again, documented so many times, how beneficial this diet is for us. Focus on things with olive oil and veggies and fruits. Throw a little red wine in there, fish, avoid red meat, butter, creamy things like that. If you can, right? Everything done like a little bit at a time. Don't say, I have to do this all. That's way too large of a goal, and we're all gonna just end up abandoning it in the first place. But maybe say one night a week, I'm gonna adhere to this. And then it becomes easier, it becomes 2 nights a week, right? Okay, C for cognitive stimulation. So doing something that is cognitively stimulating and interesting as part of a leisure activity, this is helpful, okay? It's not a cure-all though. There's a lot of information out there. People want to, have you buy things on websites, and there's different subscription-based things. If I just do this exercise every day, I'm going to improve my brain health, my memory, and my processing, and things like that. It doesn't quite work like that, okay? You should do something that is fun and interesting for you and keeps you engaged. One of the best things you can do for yourself is actually learning something new. That will help create new neural networks in the brain. It will also strengthen other neural networks, because it's true, if you're not using it, you do lose it. It does become weaker. Our brain does go through a process of pruning and getting things out that we have not been using for a while. But one of the principles of neuroplasticity, you have a new thing that you're trying to learn, you repeat it over and over again, it's important to you, it will build new connections. So, find something that you like, and if you can, try to do it with somebody else, okay? And that's tied into the social piece as well, that will come a little bit later. Oh, actually, no, engage with others, yes, I thought it was the S, that is the E, engagement with others. So being lonely, even if you're surrounded by people, you can still have a sense of loneliness. They've actually showed that loneliness is pretty much akin to how bad for you smoking is. Okay, that's how we're learning about all the mental health changes, really that came out of with the pandemic. How detrimental is loneliness to our mental health and our cognition in general. And it turns out it is very, very detrimental. Okay, R, relaxation, meditation, yoga or progressive muscle relaxation helps reduce stress, inflammation, and can combat depression and anxiety. And don't neglect your sleep. Deep sleep, the stage of sleep where we enter, helps clear out toxins, including amyloid. So we don't want those plaques to build up, because that's one of those signs of Alzheimer's that they find in the brain. This does play a very important role in maintaining our brain health. Okay, so just to go back to that social engagement again, it is really, really important. It's known as a buffer of cognitive reserve in the wake of cognitive decline. So it could be what's keeping that cognitive decline at bay. If you are somebody who has a group that they go out to Tuesdays and Thursdays, you play cards on Wednesday nights, you have dinner with the family on Sunday, you know, you have things that you have to get to, you have reasons that you have to get up, you have somebody maybe that's depending on you for a ride to go out to the senior center or to come to the lecture, to get to pickleball on time. Those things we take for granted. We think of them as just kind of like, oh, I'm just kind of retirement, I'm just hanging out, going to the diner with a friend, not a big deal. But it's actually, you're using lots of cognition, lots of executive function skills, language, attention, memory, orientation, okay? That helps. Even being just somebody to talk to for someone else, that helps your own sense of confidence, that you could be that person for somebody else, and that you have somebody that you can vent to as well. Studies have shown that being socially engaged and receiving emotional support have direct effects on immediate and delayed recall, your verbal fluency skills, your conversing, your ability to pull out those words a little quicker, better mental health, reduced stress, and it makes you participate more in physical activity. Okay. So now I wanted to go in a little bit more in talking about understanding memory, okay? I'm just gonna start with a little 3-word recall, okay? I'm gonna say 3 words. I want you guys just to repeat them to yourselves. Try to remember them for a few minutes from now, okay, when we come back to it. The words today are banana, sunrise, and chair, okay? Repeat them to yourself. Anyone need me to repeat them? Good, okay. So how do we remember? Okay, I wanted to give you some tips on what you can do today to be more aware of your attention and your memory and how you can help yourself remember a little better. So like I said before, it all starts with our attention. I have to ask my husband the same thing a couple of times because I'm really not paying as close attention as I should be, because I'm still trying to get, you know, dinner ready, or I'm taking care of something else, and I might ask him something, or he's talking anyway, and I'm just kind of yesing him. So, you know, yes, I'm hearing it. Yes, I remember that we spoke, but I'm not quite paying full attention to that. So if I can't, you know, really expect myself to remember, it's not my fault, right? When I do pay attention to something, okay, like you all just paid attention to those words. I explicitly said, I'm gonna come back to those words. I gotta remember to do that now. So, we've now taken this memory that we've heard and we've encoded it, okay? We have to assign meaning to that memory. Those weren't just 3 random words. Let's pretend they were something, a password that I told you that you're gonna have to remember to input later. Okay, we all get those dual fact, those things you have to remember, those numbers, those 6 digits on the phone now to enter into everything. I always try to test myself, remember those 6 numbers, don't look back at the phone again, you know. So we have to assign meaning to this, we encode it, and then we have to tell the brain to store it somewhere. Now, of course, you're not having these conversations with your brain, right? It's doing this automatically for you. It did it great your whole life. You remember lots of things. As kids, they forget things. They forget a lot of stuff, right? They might remember something really crazy, like you remember you had that cookie this last time you came here 2 years ago, but they can't remember what you just told them 5 seconds ago, right? Memory's pretty bad then. Gets really, really good then in our 20s and later on. Then it starts to change. So we kind of still have the thought that we don't have to have these conversations with our brain, that we'll just remember it. That's what we're used to doing. But, you know, when it's not quite working like that anymore and you've noticed that you're not remembering as well as you used to, here's where I do want you to start to be more proactive with saying to yourself, okay, I really need to remember that. So what can I do? How can I take that memory as part of that just working memory? It was just that quick 30-second thing that I heard right then, but do I need it for later? You have to put it in the right spot. Do you need it to be a short-term memory? Do you need to access it again tomorrow or the week after or a year from now? Okay, So depending on where you're gonna put this memory, it's gonna go into either short-term or longer-term storage. I always get people coming to me saying, well, why am I having such a hard time remembering? I remember what I did in, who my teacher was in first grade, right? It's a totally different system, connected to so many different connections in your brain and stored at a more pivotal time in your life. So of course we're not remembering what we ate for dinner last night. We are definitely not assigning the same level of meaning to that as we did to our first grade teacher. Who here can remember their first grade teacher? Right, it's not surprising. I can remember the smell of my elementary school, new paint, because they got rid of all the asbestos. So then the part comes where we say, oh, I need that memory. Can I go back and retrieve it? It depends on what you did with it. If you just let it come in, kind of wash over you, and you didn't store it, chances are you're not going to remember it. But if you let it come in and then you referred back to it a little bit, you made it a point to maybe make some associations with it, you pictured things, you connected the dots in your brain, you gave it some more meaning, you weighed it down in your brain, that's when we can pull up those memories. So everyone, think to yourself, what were those 3 words? Can you recall them?
Yes.
Okay, all right, go ahead, shout them out.
Banana, sunrise.
All right, pretty good.
That's only because you told us.
I wonder, yeah.
If you had, forget.
Yeah, it might have just been, I should have said it all the way at the beginning. Now, I also get this complaint a lot too. I get up, I go into the other room, and then I cannot remember why I came there, okay? It does happen to all of us, but again, it's one of those things where you have to rate, like, how often is it happening, right? Because it's normal for it to happen occasionally. It's not really normal for it to happen every time, okay? So it depends on how stressed you are, how overworked you are, tired. Are you trying to multitask too much? So this is actually a known phenomenon. You're walking across a threshold, right, the doorway, and now your brain has to do something called event updating. It's taking in all of this new stimuli from this new room that you're in, and that memory of what you were doing, now that has been kind of pushed aside while your brain is processing this new information, okay? So yeah, it might take you like a split second to come back to what it was, or it might start to take a little bit longer. I mean, I'm guilty of it too. I'll go down to the basement, okay, what did I come down here for? Because there's lots of stuff, and I'm like, oh, I have to do that, oh, I forgot about that, I have to do that. So lots of reminders start to flood in. Oh, that's right, I came down for this. So as my brain is kind of thinking and taking all this in, another part is mentally retracing my steps, okay? Now, if this is happening to you a little too much, the first step is recognizing that it's happening too much, okay? If you still have good executive function skills intact, you should be able to recognize that and say, yeah, I'm doing this, I think, a little too much. I can remember I'm having to walk all the way back. Oh yeah, I was working on this, and then go back to that other room again. I do this a couple of times a day, okay? So once you recognize that, then before you leave that first room, you have to be very focused on what it is you're going in there for. Picture what it is you're going to get. Picture yourself taking it out. If it's in a drawer, picture yourself opening that drawer. Remember what it was you were working on, okay? Then when you get to that room, try not to get distracted by other things on the way over there, the cat, the window that's open that you meant to close, or whatever it is. You just kind of walk straight there, you get what it is you need, and if you need to mentally retrace, hopefully it'll be quicker this time because you did that prep work before. Okay, so what are just simple strategies that you all can put into place today if you don't already have them? A routine, so important. Our body likes routine, it builds muscle memory. It helps when we do the same thing over and over again because our body just kind of starts to do it then automatically. Okay, and when you forget to do something, it feels off, right? You get that sensation like I feel like I forgot something. Okay. Now, what can throw a wrench into that routine is something new. So, for example, having to take a new medication at a different time of day. Okay, so you might take all your meds in the morning, you have it part of your routine, you drink your coffee, your pill box is there, you take your pills, and you don't forget them because they're right next to the coffee pot, right? So you've kept things in line of sight, and you have a designated place for it, and it doesn't change. So that way that helps you not forget to take your medication. But now you have an antibiotic that has to be taken an hour after you eat. So you can't take it with breakfast or coffee anymore. You have to take it at a different time. You know, what could you do then? It's very easy to forget something new like that. So that's when we have to start doing some other things. We have to start using other external tools to help ourselves remember. I use my smart device in my home, Alexa. I use it all the time. I use it to check the weather, check, well, the date not so much, but I use it to set reminders, especially if there's a new medication or I have to give a medication to my dog. That might slip my mind, but that's what these things are for, calendars and planners. We have given out little books. You can use those as little notebooks. It's important to keep things in the same spot too. I love Post-it notes, but they're not great memory strategies. They're just too small, you can't write everything down, and they get lost really easily. Or if you're like some of my patients, you tack 50 of them on the wall and then you keep them there forever. And that's not an efficient strategy either. Having an alarm or a watch, a smart watch maybe that could give you an alarm or a timer, that's really important. I use that too. I'm outsourcing my memory, right? So again, it comes with recognition that I can't keep everything in here. We have limited capacity. We're not meant to remember everything that this evolved world has us doing, right? So I need to outsource some of this stuff to other tools. So getting used to using other tools like this and getting good at using them is a way for you to keep your independence and keep your memory intact without somebody else having to remind you of these things. But I realize we can't write down everything. There's not an app for everything. We do have to use our brain sometimes, right? These are the internal strategies. This is where I can use something like my mind's eye. I have to be mindful. I have to, really think about where I am and what I'm seeing, what my senses are taking in the moment that I'm trying to remember something. That will help me remember it better. I have to refer back to these things. I have to repeat it over and over again. I can sequence things together, or I can link things like those 6 numbers that we get on the phone for the passwords. I always chunk those together into 2 sets of 3. So that way I'm not remembering 6 different numbers, I'm just remembering 2. I associate things together. Elaboration, if I could come up with a wacky elaboration to help remember something, oh, you're gonna remember it for sure. Like really silly. And no one has to know what you're thinking of to remember it, but it makes sense to you. Rhyming and acronyms are not that practical. We used an acronym today for dancers, so they come up every once in a while, but they're not something that people do all the time as a way to remember. I want you to find what's the most practical, realistic thing that you can do to help your memory. Okay, so final thoughts, you came here, right? You saw what the lecture was about. You thought it would be something that was interesting. You're already on the right path. You're on the right track. You're interested in this. You recognize that brain health is really important. You want to maintain your autonomy and your independence. You're trying to learn something new, right? So that's one of the keys, right? Discuss changes that you're having with loved ones, with your healthcare providers. Don't let it get too far down the line before, recognizing that, okay, maybe something is going on. Let me look into this. Maybe it's not as bad as I think it is. Maybe I'm catastrophizing it. There could be something I can do about it. There are professionals out there to help you. The doctor might be be the first step, but they're not gonna be working with you as a therapy. There are clinicians, you know, as a physical therapist can get you started on a good training program, a home exercise program to stay active. Occupational therapists help you continue doing the activities of daily living, okay, and working on compensations and adaptations so that you can continue doing things for yourself. They also deal a little bit with cognition, and then speech pathologists work with people who are having cognitive changes. Okay, so we're here for you. We come in the home. We have our outpatient center as well. So that's it, everybody. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
We have a little like word game if anybody wants to participate in it. I'm just gonna pass them out.
I have a question.
A couple here too. Oh yes, question.
Are these slides available to us?
Yes, I think we are going to. It's being recorded, and are the slides going to be available?
I can send them to everybody.
Because it's really hard to write down all the notes that are going on.
Sure.
If you're okay with sending them out, when I send the recording to everyone, I'll send the slide.
Okay.
If you're okay, RVNA is okay.
Now I chose a kind of high-level cognitive word game. Now again, these are not games that I say, hey, this is gonna improve your memory, but I like these kinds of games to kind of get my brain a little bit woken up. Every morning I do Wordle, I do connections, I try those stupid crossword puzzles. I hate crossword puzzles. So I'm not gonna recommend you do something that you don't like, okay? Do something that you like that's cognitively stimulating and interesting to you. I wanted to just give you an example of something that could work on some reasoning skills. Does everybody have one now? Okay, so if you look at the example, 26L of the A. So it's giving you a number, okay? And then it's giving you two abbreviations. So you have to figure out that 26L refers to 26 letters of the alphabet, okay? If we just go to number 1, anybody see what that could be?
7 days a week.
Yeah, you can shout them out, feel free. Go ahead, keep on going down. Yep, 52 cards in the deck.
12 months a year.
Yep.
States.
States. Yep.
50 minutes an
Minutes.
hour.
What's number 6?
Number
I hear some
6?
different answers.
18 holes on a golf ball.
Yes.
Ah, you have to
18
pick off
holes
to go
on a
that
golf
way.
course. 4 quarters of a ball. Yep. Okay, so we're a little stuck on number 8.
Yep.
Any ideas? Not seconds.
Seats?
Siblings and triplets.
Oh, that's a good one. It's 3 sides on a triangle. I like your answer.
52 weeks in a year.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
What did you say?
It's like a BLT.
Oh, a BLT.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have my answer key with me. I had to think about that one again too.
Okay.
What's
Any sports? If you're sports fans, you'll have a advantage with this one.
9 players on a baseball team?
Yes.
Baseball team.
9 players on a baseball team.
24
24 hours.
a day.
And
36 inches in a yard.
Yard.
yard, and the next one is years.
100 years.
Years in a century.
2
2
pints
pints
in
in
a
a
quart.
quart.
Yeah.
365 days a year.
Yes. And what are those 3 words I wanted you to remember?
Bananas.
Share.
All right, pretty good, everybody. Now, there would be no way and no reason for you to remember those words till tomorrow. But I bet you would if you go home again and you said the words, and then you said them again maybe an hour later, you would remember them for tomorrow, okay? So you see the benefit of actually using a strategy like repetition. It will help you remember things for a longer time. Yes? Okay.
I don't know if this is appropriate for here, but something that's been on my mind is the advertising for Prevagen.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I'm not,
Yeah, thank you for bringing yeah, no, so over-the-counter memory aids have not shown any scientific benefit and any studies that they've been doing. There are some medications though, so that's why speaking to your doctor and getting a formal diagnosis, because there are some medications that have shown some promise. There's not the one cure medication though, but yeah, I don't recommend taking any over-the-counter stuff. And yeah.
But does exercise help?
Yes, exercise. If you're gonna do one thing today and say, you know what, I'm gonna start an exercise program, that might be the easiest thing that you can do, because remember, it gets the blood flowing, it gets the oxygen up to the brain, it helps strengthen, prevents sarcopenia, muscle, loss, and bone loss. Yes.
Back to the exercise, it said something about the men should be doing a moderate amount and the women between moderate and high or something?
Yeah, we have to do a little bit more, I guess.
Is that like more times during the week or like more aggressive on the exercise? Or?
I think to meet a higher amount of minutes per week. Yeah. So I've just tried to incorporate a little bit more into a program. Yeah, but yeah, I know. Sorry, girls. Yes.
I know that kids can cherry pick information out, which I never knew, but they can do that a lot when they're little, 8, 9 years old. When you get older, do you cherry pick in a different way?
You mean like selective listening? Is
Yeah,
that what
well,
you mean?
selective, yeah, I know that little kids can do that, which I
They like to
don't.
hear what they want to hear. Is that
Well,
what
no,
you're
their brain will discard stuff that they don't need, that's
Oh,
what
okay.
I'm talking about.
Yes, that is a natural pruning process. The
Right.
brain takes like what you're wearing today, I'm not gonna remember, or what I'm wearing, you're not gonna remember that.
Right.
So the brain naturally discards things that are unnecessary,
Right,
but unfortunately it starts to discard things that are
that's
necessary.
my question, it changes how it, what it's taking
Yes. So
out, that's my
because of
question.
changes in the hippocampus, which is one of the most important parts of the brain involved in learning new memories and learning in general, that those changes to those cells affect all of the information coming in. So it's harder to tease out like what's the good stuff that I need to keep versus what's the stuff I should be getting rid
Are
of.
they doing studies on all this electronic and all this information? We didn't have this for years, a lot of us anyway. Are they doing studies on that? I mean, my brain is like, I can't handle all this stuff that now is presented every
Sure.
day.
Sure.
And I don't think that that's, my brain isn't working well. It's like too much.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you're right. That's why, like I said, I had to outsource a lot too, because I just can't, for the amount of things that we're doing, it's the brain. The brain kind of has an evolution, maybe hasn't caught up to everything that we have to, or that we're living longer, and that these are changes that were going to be happening to the brain.
Well, that's what I'm wondering if they do studies on that, because it's different now.
Very much.
Yes, many of the gizmos are getting so difficult to use. I don't know anything like learning.
Right. So learning how to use it. All right. What new device is out now? Now I have to learn
Right.
this one. Yeah. I mean, I'm even feeling like that too. Like, what's the new app that my daughter's only 9, so I don't have to worry about it too much. But as she gets older, I have to know what she's doing. So I'm gonna have to learn all that stuff
Yeah.
too. And I'm like, oh, that's
They lost that childlike curiosity. Children, they figure out quickly.
Yeah.
Yes, they do. They do. But they're not taking in other stuff that we're having to worry about. They don't have the
That's
same
true.
level of stress or inflammation.
Right.
Yes.
Susan, can I ask you, at the beginning it said like 11.9% of Alzheimer's and you were talking about dementia. Is dementia like the first part of Alzheimer's? Or?
No, so that's a good question. So dementia is a umbrella term for a significant cognitive change that interferes with daily life and has language impairments. There are different types of dementia. There's like frontotemporal lobe dementia. Bruce Willis was recently diagnosed with that. That is another aggressive form of dementia, more rapid in its decline, affects speech and swallowing and language much earlier. That is one form of dementia. There is vascular dementia that can come from, let's say, somebody having a stroke or other vascular issues. They can develop a vascular dementia. Alzheimer's is just one of the dementias. It's the most common kind.
One of the dementias,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Didn't know that.
Is Parkinson's a dementia?
Oh, I'm sorry. One second.
I'm finding that, I spend a lot of time in the morning on my smartphone. I love doing research and on Facebook, a lot, investigating things. It's not all social. I feel like my brain is in mush whiplash stage after that.
Oh, it's,
Do you think I'm doing it too much?
well, I think that that's a sign of some attention, some mental fatigue, right? So, I mean, that we just have to change the way we think about our brain, right? Like, it would make sense if you went out and you went to the gym for an hour and you did, you know, all these types of exercises, you would feel tired after that, and that would make sense to you. But yet here you've just done all of this mental exercise, and you're surprised that your brain kind of feels tired. You know, because we don't think about it that way. It's not just you. None of us think about it that way, but it is. It's kind of like a brain fatigue, and I think it's a warning sign to kind of give yourself a chance to replenish. You know, we start the day with a certain amount of energy and reserves that we have to use for all of our things that we need to get done, and if we've burned it all on doing, you know, one larger activity, we are going to be more tired and not think as clearly. Yes, go ahead. You were asking about Parkinson's and.
Yeah, I was wondering, is Parkinson's of that?
So Parkinson's does have a component, not in every case, but there is a much higher risk of cognitive impairment, especially a dementia, a Parkinson's type dementia. Lewy body disorder dementia is also very common in Parkinson's disease. So not all people with Parkinson's will develop dementia, but there is a higher risk of it with that disease. Any other questions? Yes.
I'd like to say you've given a wonderful talk.
Thank you.
You're a wonderful example of a fully engaged human being. This gentleman asked about Prevagen.
Yeah.
Are there other miracle products that are being advertised on television, radio, whatever, that you would warn us against now?
Oh, to warn you against.
Yeah.
I don't know all the names. I tend to not watch commercials, but yeah, any product that's an over-the-counter like memory aid, and you see the people saying I've significantly improved my memory because of this. Yeah, that would be a big red flag for me. Have you guys ever watched Dr. Gupta recently did a documentary, The Last Alzheimer's Patient? That was a very good documentary. Oh, sorry, I didn't do that. That he kind of goes through a lot of this information, and he highlights the importance of it, diet changes and exercise. So if you're looking for some information on that, might be a good first step to find some more information.
What was that program, Dr. Gupta?
Yes, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, The Last Alzheimer's Patient, I believe it was called. Yeah, it was really good.
Question, I would think that hydration is really important, because I get older, I want less water. I'm seeing much older people, they don't want water, they do not want it. And this to me wasn't addressed, but I think it's important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
4 to 6 glasses a day, they say.
Or just you kind of lose your taste a little bit for it.
You're right. I have a lot of people that don't drink as much water as they should. And yeah, again, because it could lead to dehydration,
Right, right.
urinary tract infections, which
Yes.
could lead to the hospital visit, the rehab visit, the 3 months out of the home. Yeah, and it's a snowball. Yeah.
It's interesting to hear about the changes in the diet. My mother had Alzheimer's, and she went from a great diet to suddenly only wanting cookies and ice cream. And I was like, what happened here?
Yeah.
And they said one of the things is your sweet taste bud is one of the last to be active for older people. That they lose appreciation of other tastes, but they crave sweets.
You know, it's hard because when somebody gets more severe and they only want one thing, you're just inclined to give them that because, well, what harm is it going to do? I need to get calories into them anyway, you know. And meanwhile, it's just hard because we know how bad processed food is and sugary foods are for us. But there becomes a certain point where it's very hard. You have to pick your battles. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
How are the medications today to slow the progression of dementia?
How are they? You said, or they're not cure-alls. They could be part of your program. Part of, you know, a lot of my patients have, if they're receiving therapy, but they're also on a medication that, you know, it's hard to judge also because you're doing a lot of testing and they have to go back to the testing to see how they compare, you know, on or off the medication. So sometimes it's a little harder if they don't go for the retesting to know whether or not it's beneficial for them. A lot of it is more subjective data if they're noticing changes. So it could be different person to person.
Can I
Is
just,
it only helpful if it's quiet?
dementia in general, yes, that was one of the key points, is that, prevention is so, so important, because once it's established in the brain, remember those changes have started from 20 years before, so it's much harder, in fact, possible to stop that in its tracks once it's really gotten a foothold.
Is there more than one medication?
Yes, there are different classes of medications that work on some different things. Yes.
I had the privilege of hearing some other talks through your agency at Richfield Library, and I just wondered, I think some of them were recorded. Is there a way to access those?
Andrea will be able to answer that question. It is being recorded. The other presentations you're talking about?
Yeah, the ones.
I don't know if those were recorded or not. Were they part of the dementia program?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I have to ask if those
Yeah,
other
I think they
ones
were at the
recorded.
time, because some of them I was able to watch it on Zoom, but it would be nice to.
To go back. I think we are running that program. I'm sorry, say it again. She was asking about the dementia program that we have. I think it was at a different location, if they were recorded and if we could reassess them.
I have to go back and see, I think we have them on our RVNAhealth YouTube channel, and there should be a playlist under dementia, program, different topics that we talked about.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
It's through the Richfield Library?
Well, we do a series each year where we talk about different things regarding dementia, so communication challenges and things to look out for when you first find out, and how do you deal with it as it progresses. And I know that some of them have been recorded. If you leave me your email, I can try to find the best resource for you on where the recordings are. That is helpful.
We do have a YouTube channel.
We do, RVNAhealth.
Look up RVNAhealth.
Yeah,
On YouTube.
right. Yeah, and also we did one at the Richfield Library, so you can also check there as well.
Can I just mention to the group that, in the last issue of AARP, there's an article about nuts and how the different nuts have actually different brain benefits.
Oh, wow.
So-
Especially walnuts.
Right, and so they listed all the nuts, and they gave the 25-letter word that affects the brain. And I just want people to know what I've done is I've gone and I've bought like 8 different nuts, and I put them in a blender, and then I have it as my afternoon snack. 'Cause I used to, and it really has really helped. So
Good.
So
it was
what are the best nuts?
the last issue of AARP.
Do you recall which ones are the best? Do you recall?
I don't know, there were like 8 or 9 listed,
okay.
and so,
Is almond on it?
huh?
Almonds.
Oh, definitely. Almonds, walnuts, cashews, yes.